through my family stuff, and I really appreciate any inconvenience that my not being here this week has caused you. So that said, we are going to move out of branding and start into web presence. And we're going to start with some basics on web platforms. But before we do that, let me take a moment to just kind of highlight how I envision the week going. So, this is a week where generally we do a lot of in-class activities on some web work. So, since I will not be there in class with you and we're doing our lecture online, I am going to have you work on one activity during class while I'm away. So that said, you will have two recorded videos to watch. A lecture on basics of web platforms, that will be this video, and then I'm also going to move into heuristics. I will also attempt to get to creating a video on our next assignment for you so you can start to work on that. I'll touch on that in the next lecture video that I do. So what I want you to note is, so think of this class like we're all together on Zoom and in person, except I have two videos. So you're going to watch my videos, but we're going to do what we would typically do in class. So for this first video, you are going to have an activity. So I'll introduce the activity to you now. You will have until Friday at 11 p.m. to turn it in. It's an activity that I generally take almost an entire class period on. So please note that it will take you some time. So if you need to dedicate one of the two class periods to get this done, please do so. A couple other reminders. There's the knowledge check on branding that's due on the 29th. We all are also starting a discussion forum on principles of advertising ethics. That's really important for you to understand. So the first post is also due on the 29th. I know this is a lot of work for 1 week, but we're going to have to start moving at a pretty good clip to get done everything that we need to do for the semester. Your branding assignment, which I probably think most of you have wrapped up already or you're pretty close to, will be due on the 1st. And then I'm going to introduce to you this week sometime the website assignment that will be due on the 18th. So I know a lot of stuff going on this week, probably a little difficult if I'm not here, but please know if you need to text me or email me, I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as I can. If it's really important, we can set up a face-to-face Zoom call as well. I'll make some time to carve out to spend with you then. So thanks so much again, and let's kind of get into what we're going to talk about today. So now that you've already, we've done the work of, you've got some target audiences. We talked about segmentation, targeting, and positioning for your clients. You're in the process of wrapping up your brand identity, so you should have a pretty good idea of how you want that whole brand presence to be for every touch point for the consumers of that particular product or service. And now what we're going to do, that we have those two important elements, the who we're going to target, the values and the brand itself. Now we're going to move into how do you develop a web presence around that, because as we all know, a web presence is everything in marketing today, because the first thing that we all do as consumers naturally is to Google and find out how to solve our needs. And as a business, we need to be there and we need to have a great web presence and demonstrate our value through that experience. So the first thing that we start off with is, if you're working with a client, they don't have a website, or you're thinking about creating your own website, you have to understand the basics. There are some fundamental things out there that you need to know, and there's a lot of options to build a website, and you need to think strategically about how you're going to handle that. So first of all, we think about web hosting. Now, back in the olden days, when we first created websites, the companies had their own servers, like, a server that you would have in the back room of a data center, or even a PC or a laptop that you would have that you would hold all of the data for your web properties. Now, in the real world, where we have millions of touches and millions of pieces of data, most companies cannot handle the storage of that data. Not only from an expense perspective, imagine the number of servers you would have to keep if you had as much information as we keep in the cloud today. The second thing is data security and maintenance of those servers. So I've worked for companies that had, floors of machines to keep data and hosting all of that important proprietary information. Most companies today outsource that to experts that simply do this data hosting and storage and security as a business. So the very first thing that you do as a business is decide, are you going to manage all that data on your own? Maybe you will, because perhaps you don't trust Microsoft or some other companies to store your data. Maybe you, like me, I worked at Honeywell. We had government contracts. There was no way we were going to hand that data over to anyone else. So I don't know, maybe you're in a security business or something where you feel like you have to own your own data and not have it outside your walls. Perfectly fine. Most of us today, even the large companies, outsource this because it's just too much time and energy and investment to put this within your own walls. But that's the very first thing you decide. Are you going to host your data? Are you going to have somebody else do it for you? Um, so that said, once you make that decision, there's lots and lots of options out there for you. If you're a fairly large company, you're probably going to work with a big data provider, and you're going to do a lot of investigation on who that might be. If you're a smaller company or a mid-sized company, you might just use a data hosting service that many of us do. One of the user-friendly types. So once you've decided, are you going to outsource this or are you going to insource this? Then you think about, what is your domain name going to be? And the reason I have you think of the hosting first is because oftentimes many of these companies will provide you a service to get the domain name at a lesser expensive price. So everybody I talk to say, you get a domain name first, but yeah, you could do that, but you really sort of have to think strategically, particularly if you're going to have a long-term company, are you going to host it or not? So if you happen to have a knowledge check question on it, it's going to be a trick question. So remember that. Hosting first, domain name second. So your domain name is the URL of the web address where people find your site. One of the very most important things you will ever do for your company is to get the right domain name. So domain names must be registered with an SSL certificate and privacy. So this is something that you generally work with a third-party provider, your host, or the person who owns the domain name, because likely you're not going to be able to own it yourself. You're probably going to rent it unless you're really lucky. And you have to work with them and make sure that they keep that certificate up to date, or you're going to lose it to someone else. So as I mentioned, most domain names are taken or they're purchased from a third party. But what you want to think about when you are creating a domain name, is it memorable? Does that domain name reflect your brand? It used to be more important than it is now to have a domain name that, is as short as possible or reflects your brand as much as you can. And you want to do that for the identity of your brand, because every time you go to a website, that domain name is going to appear and it becomes part of your brand. Google.com, Amazon.com, anyproduct.com. You want to get as close to your name as possible. So what you'll want to do is to go through a search process to see what names best reflect our domain. So for, say for example, for if I were to start my own consulting business, and I would probably want KristyGrayson.com or GraysonConsulting.com or whatever the name of my company is.com. If I wanted something cuter, I could do that too. But it's you want it to be simple, obvious, and as short as possible, because we don't all want to go to Google all the time and search for something and then click on it. You want to be able to have something that somebody could remember and type. Amazon.com, Google.com, Facebook.com. As much as possible, you want to get it short. Um, and as I mentioned, you can purchase domain names from anywhere. There's some categories that will be far more expensive than others, but be very serious and thoughtful about doing this. So here is just the gist of what a domain name means. So the www, World Wide Web, is what we call the subdomain. Um, Generally, we don't use that anymore, but that is what it's called. The domain name itself is what you want it, your business name, or what you want people to remember. So Kristy Grayson, and then the top level domain is the three letters. Is it .com, .org, .tv, .edu? There's lots of different top level domains. In the olden days, it used to be very important that we get the .com because the .com is the most respected, most valuable. Unfortunately, many of them aren't out there anymore. So the top level domains used to mean something. .com was business. .org it would be professional. .edu would be educational. So there is some sense to it. But what you want to try to do as much as possible, get that .com if you can, because it's just another thing for your end user to have to remember if it's not a .com. If it's KristyGrayson.edu and there's a KristyGrayson.com out there, people will type KristyGrayson.com and I might lose that sale because I am an edu or a .org or something like that. So just keep that in mind. That's our goal. It might not be easy to do, but that is what our goal is. So once you have the hosting service, you're going to do it yourself. You're going to outsource it. You've purchased your domain name, and sometimes you purchase your domain name with the host. Sometimes you're out there looking for a host and they will help you with that. Also, a web platform will help you with the domain name and the hosting. But you want to focus on which web platform do you want to use. And there's lots of options out there for you. The first thing you need to think about before just going to a Wix or going to Squarespace or Shopify or another web builder to just start plugging away because it's easy and it's a nice user experience is what are the objectives of your site? You need to list this out because some of these web builders don't have as much functionality as others. Some will outright own your content. So imagine if you're a small company like me, I'm just a small little consulting company. Wouldn't be a big deal for me to have to recreate a website. I'm not going to have a whole lot of pages. It's more like a brochure. But imagine if I were to take my web store that I had when I worked at Honeywell, where I had thousands and thousands of products. Taking all that data and putting that into a new website and redesigning it would be a complete nightmare. And a lot of time and a lot of cost. So make sure that you put some time and thought into selecting the right one. Think about, are you going to need e-commerce platform? Are you going to sell stuff? People generally say, nah, I'm not going to sell stuff. But at some point in time, you may always sell stuff. So I would think that you would want to have that ability for that functionality. You want it to be able to integrate with other systems. So APIs are the ability for you to easily submit data into your platform, whether it's through an app or a web platform. You need to be able to seamlessly be able to plug in different people's APIs. Um, and then just be really clear that you want to own your platform. This is yours. Don't be baited by someone who is going to create it for you, own the content, and then at some point in time you're going to get big enough or you're going to get upset with the company for whatever reason, or there might be some functionality somewhere else. It'll be difficult for you to switch. So just keep that in mind. So I have a list of here, and when you go into Canvas, when you start reading through the content, if you are serious about websites, if you have a company, please do some research on this. Talk to other people what works for them. I do know that most people in the marketing discipline, most of your professors here who work in marketing or entrepreneurship or in design will recommend WordPress. And the reason why we recommend WordPress is if you do WordPress.org, it is free. Most of the companies in the world use WordPress. The reason why WordPress is a little bit tricky, you're going to have to learn some HTML. It's not going to be what you see is what you get and super easy user interface like some of the web builders like Wix. Um, it, 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 it will be worth your while in the long run. You don't have to. Don't lose sleep over it if you're not using WordPress today. It's not the end of the world, but I do believe it's the superior product, and I think my peers would as well. So read through that. If you look, here's just a note. There's some pros and cons of some of the web builders versus WordPress. I just wanted to show you the statistics. So you can see the red line on this map is the usage of WordPress. Most of the largest businesses, including social media like Facebook, Twitter, they're all a WordPress platform. The other ones, the web builders, are starting to increase, but something like 70% of all websites are on WordPress. And that is because of those statements I said before. You can plug generally anything into it. You own your content. And it's just easier to work with for the long haul. So that said, I have an in-class activity for you, and I know we are not in class, but pretend we are. So I have an in-class activity for you to do around website strategy. I want you to start thinking about if you were to own a business or if you were to consult or even for your own business that you're working on for your client, I want you to start thinking about domain names and how you would go about recommending a certain platform and various other objectives that are really important to the client. So please note that you will be completing this in-class activity on your own this week. We were going to do this on Tuesday. We can't do this on Tuesday because I will not be around, but I want you to watch the website platform lecture video. That's the one you're watching now, and we're going to walk through this. So here's what it is. Go into Canvas. It is in Module 4, what we're in now. There is a class period activity, Dr. G's website strategy activity. So read through this. I'm going to give you some background, and basically you are going to advise me on my consulting business on a number of different things as you build out a web strategy. The first thing you want to do is you want to ask me, what are your objectives? What do you want to get out of the website? And so what I'm going to tell you is, first of all, I want it to reflect my brand. Because remember, this is the first impression that you're going to give to anybody who visits you. This is your face to the world. So I want my website to reflect my brand. I want to demonstrate that I'm an expert in my field. So I'm probably going to do something like blogs, have some place for some content, maybe some social media plugins, things like that. I want to get found on the web. Um, I want to drive traffic there. I want to convert my leads. I want the ability to enhance my social media presence, and I want to someday sell books or some sort of merchandise or something on my site. So that said, here is your task. Those are my objectives. Here is your task. First of all, you are going to recommend some domain names for me based on availability. You're going to have to go out there and, search GoDaddy, search some other places, search domain name sales. Try to figure out what's out there. What would you recommend for my business? Would you call it Grayson Consulting? Would you call it Dr. G's Consulting Biz? Would you call it, KCG, whatever? What would you call it? Recommend something to me. And is it available? Then recommend to me what platform based on my business objectives. I told you I want to sell stuff. I told you I want to look like an expert in my field. I want to have some social media attached to it. So, what are the things that you would recommend? Describe to me how you would make it look and feel. Determine an approximate annual budget for my site. Because remember, I told you that you're going to have to pay something to have somebody outsource or host it. I'm not having servers in my house. My house is too small. So, figure out approximately how much do you think I'm going to have to pay to have a website? Is it going to cost me $8 million a year? Is it going to cost me $500 a year? What do you think? What do you think? And let me know about that. And then define a short list of pros and cons for my new website. So what you're going to do, go in to Canvas, open this up, read the background. I also have a copy of my brand identity that we use that as an example in class. And take a look at that. So this activity is going to be set up. There's a PDF all written out with all the details if you'd like to print it out and look at it, but this is going to be turned in through Canvas. It is a questionnaire. So I'm going to walk through these questions right here, your task, and you're going to complete that. So just as a reminder, the first thing I asked you to do was, I want my website to express my brand identity. So remember, if I were a brand as a person, I would be sophisticated, intelligent, quirky, compassionate, and trustworthy. These are the colors that I believe would be relevant to my brand because trustworthy is blue. I would probably personally, like a splash of blue, not really the whole thing blue, but I like the more modern, sophisticated black, gray with a little splash of color. My typography is going to be modern. It's going to be simple and easy to read on the web. And here's my imagery. No photos of people. I like that clean, modern look. If I'm going to have color, it's going to be a splash of color with a little bit of blue and a little bit of pink because I'm a little quirky. I'm not going to, the only iconography I'm going to have, nothing's going to be, cutesy. Nothing's going to be the emoji stuff. If the only iconography I would ever have on my site is navigation. And then I don't really have a logo. I guess I do have one, but I'm not going to show you what that looks like now. So there's my logo. So that said, that is the very, very basics that you need to know about. Who's going to host your site? What's your domain name going to be? What platform are you going to use? And how are you going to pull it all together? What budget do you think you're going to have for this? So I want you to take some time, work through this, go through the content that I have in Canvas, look at some of the different web platforms, make a recommendation on the activity, and have fun with this. So again, thank you very much for your patience. Should you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email is probably the best way through Canvas. If you would like to text me, I will definitely respond to that as well. And my cell phone number is 651-808-0196. So this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to all these great recommendations that you are going to come up with for me for my business. So thank you all and have an amazing day.